What's ahead for the US carryover stocks and the impact or the outcome of the new trade deals with the UK? Jerry Gidel is ready to assess all of that and more right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, this week we have had the announcement of a new trade deal with between the United States and the United Kingdom. I guess that was my take on this. The UK was selected first because of a political message here, and that the UK is a lot more aligned to the US than many other countries. So basically, what impacts the agriculture and food production, and that the UK has committed to buy more US ethanol and US beef.
Yes, you're exactly right. I think we've had a lot of conversations with Japan, same thing with, uh, India and that, and yet they didn't decide to, because they're really not doing a finalized deal here. They're still just, we still have issues on some of the ideas about importing British cars into the U.S. There's some talk that's going to happen. It's going to go lower, but wasn't finalized. Things like that. And exactly right. The ethanol, yeah, would be positive. I don't think they have any particular capabilities to produce ethanol. That's a positive from there. And to some extent, I wasn't anticipating them to be looking for more ethanol in England, but I think that the trends we've been seeing in the U.S. were suggesting that maybe we're going to see some more ethanol output in our old crop. The interesting thing on the beef side, they're talking it up about both sides dropping back on their tariffs and that the uh, the biggest thing is though that the British are not supposedly changing their hormone level. Well, I'm not sure what kind of beef we're going to be able to send them their way, but it's better than getting nothing done. And I think exactly right. That was a positive here about something because we do need to get some more announcements going. We got quite a few countries to work through here between
Yeah,
now and
the Secretary of Commerce, Lutnick, he has signalized that probably the next announcement would be in another continent to probably to show a message that not only in Europe but in Asia uh, things will work it out. I guess there are so many things going on. My guess is that there will be India, but right now India is being affected by a new conflict with Pakistan. So
yes.
that would generate a negative impact for any negotiation
Oh, I
with
kind of agree
tariffs.
that their attention is uh, over Kashmir and the rockets back and forth and things like that. Definitely takes your attention away from a trade agreement with the U.S. But in general, the same thing on Japan along the way. The one thing that looks like that the Brazilians and the Chinese have got worked out here is that their previous problems about some of the shipments we had over the wintertime has been settled, and everybody's needs to get feeling copacetic on that because right now, at least, the Brazilians are definitely cranking up their shipments to Japan on a seasonal basis. And that the interesting twist on it, we've had a little bit of exports activity. Seems like keep floating around through the U.S. here. I don't know if it's just because of Pacific little needs or whatever. The one interesting thing that happened this week is that we had some couple big jumps here in U.S. sales to Mexico along the way. From there, the oh, I can't seem to have lost my little table here at this point. Oh, here it is over here. From that standpoint, where we've got most of it's new crop, but at the same time, they're doing some old crop corn to Mexico. And we've also had some sales here uh, from the U.S. To some other areas of the country here, which is positive on this thing. I think it has all to do with the fact that we've extended this window out for another 60 days at this point. So people are taking advantage of it. I guess the key question is, though, if you don't get it shipped out by the end of June, then still could be some taxes. Tariffs on things at this point if you don't have something worked out. So definitely lots of things floating along in there. One thing that popped up, and we're going to have the big meeting between the U.S. and China finally this weekend uh, in Switzerland at this point, and that. Uh, as always the case, it seems like with President Trump, he loves to bring lots of optimism about something dramatic happening at this various meetings at the time. I definitely think there could be some thawing of the relationships, but I don't know how much we're going to see as a drop from this 140% tariffs that he's already announced. But let's hope there's something moving that direction. We get some more positive things going on. That's a huge, huge factor out there. Taking that psychological block out there on the U.S. demand long term would definitely be a positive on this thing. From there, the uh, the the Indian scenario you talked about there in demand, they're U.S. wants to drop the genetically modified requirements on shipments going to India. Uh, on their side, I don't know if that's going to get straightened out or not because they are definitely not a big fan of GMOs. So we'll see how that works out on
Well, and
those.
I think India is a big upset for China as the US sends more manufacturing to India. It might generate some friction, an additional friction between the USA and China.
Oh, I don't disagree. There's been that factor of switching things over. The other twist of the same kind of scenario right now, we've had some dry conditions really from Shanghai across the North China Plains all the way to Beijing for, geez, at least 6 or 8 weeks. Maybe over the wintertime, we didn't have the greatest snows in there either. And so lots of people have been focused on that. China has been resisting buying U.S. wheat or any wheat, but they did today come up with some signs that they bought some Canadian and Australian wheat. There's not a lot left of Australian wheat. Canada and our Chinese have had a tiff for a while, and that there might be some supplies being able to come out of Canada, but it won't be huge amounts. So if that issue continues and it starts impacting what's going on with their corn production, which is also some there, most of it's in the north, excuse me, up in the Manchuria in the northeast, and that on corn. But in general, the weather conditions out there in China have not been the greatest. So that's another thing in the backdrop situation could end up impacting the whole scenario here on what China does or China doesn't do. I think the real key thing is that on Monday here, the USDA is going to release its very big seasonal numbers here for both well, the finalized numbers to some extent on old crop 24-25, US and world, and that, and also put together their plain intentions with their numbers for yields and how that all sits together here to begin some things here. With the expanded corn acres we've got going now and the jump of, I think it's 400,000 or 500,000 acres more of corn plantings than what was indicated in the wintertime, and that we're going to have plenty of corn around. The interesting twist on it is, as I kind of mentioned here earlier, we might see a little bit of decline in beginning stocks because of the ethanol side of things here. That's 50 million. That's not big, but in general, we've seen this last year's projected export or projected ending stocks dropped from like 2 billion down to, well, it's 1.465 billion last month, and I'm taking another 50 million off of it from there. Now, in general, I wouldn't expect any kind of changes in the just the basic numbers of 181 bushel yield and what we expect on harvested acres on corn. Same situation on beans, 55, 52.5 that the USDA used over winter, which I think is a very aggressive number. I'm not sure why we haven't been above 51 and a half for 8 years. So there's a situation there, but those are the numbers we're going to deal with, and that's the numbers we're going to see. But overall, a lot of trade people are looking for kind of the unchanged number from what they saw in the wintertime of 1.9 billion on carryover stock. I kind of feel like that the demand structure we've got built up and the prices are going to, at this point, not likely to be a huge improvement with these kind of planted numbers, and that the USDA won't have a little bit building demand numbers as we go forward on that on the corn and
Yeah,
that.
and another impact might be the lower energy prices at this point because crude oil is below $60 a barrel.
True, true. But I think the one twist of it is that there's a promotion of 15% ethanol. Now, to some extent, guaranteed that the energy world in the U.S. is not, uh, it- when the prices are high, they can blend in cheaper ethanol and get the same high price. Maybe you're right that they might slip a little bit in some areas, but I'd have to say that even the ethanol prices are not expensive so that they can still blend it in. Switching over to the soybeans for what we might see on Monday at 11 o'clock is that, as I said, I thought we'd see well, because of where we're at here and that we've only need 50 million, 58 million, I think it is, yet to sell to get to the USDA's expectations. And that I kind of feel like that they might actually go ahead and increase exports on old crop. That's only 20 million, but they really have just stood on their hands here for 3 months, and I kind of feel like that's a possibility. And then the fact that we have a slightly smaller planted acreages, and that I'm kind of anticipating the number that could be closer to 300 million on carryover stock. And I think that might be the subtleties of what's gone on in the last 10 days to maybe 2 or 3 weeks here, with the beans kind of holding together while corn has been on the defensive going into these numbers on Monday because of the fact that carryover stock on corn is going to increase from this year's level, while beans, it might decrease, decrease as much as 50 to 75 million, depending on what you're looking at. Wheat on the cup dumping numbers continues to be a wait and see attitude here. Export wise, we just continue to have limited sales out the door. For the last, it looks like that one has been trimmed twice, and I think it could trim a third time by another 15 million. New crop wise, weather wise, Texas and Oklahoma have got a lot of rain. Uh, Eastern Kansas has got rain, which is where the corn and soybeans are at. Western Kansas and Nebraska, even parts of South Dakota and Colorado haven't had the best of rains. So I'm kind of anticipating the winter wheat number to be down, and that could pull down the national number below 51. I'm using 50.95, not very far, and that on expectations for the national yield. From there, we had reduced uh, area on spring wheat here this spring, and that not by much, but some. I kind of feel like that number could even drop further, but that's not going to be in this number. We're going to look at winter wheat numbers and that, and so that number is going to be down slightly, while the spring wheat and durum numbers are going to be kind of the typical 550, 570 million bushels that's added onto the spring wheat, or excuse me, onto the winter wheat number we get on Monday from there. But I think the real interesting twist on this wheat market is that where China turns out to be here going forward, how much, if we get something in that world changing at that point, I think that could be a factor. And I think that weather conditions, there's been some talk that there's been freezes in Ukraine in the last month that could impact their yield. Been some dry conditions in parts of Russia, and also, of course, as I just mentioned, about parts of the U.S. Winter wheat areas. So the world numbers on wheat, despite limited demand going on here, because everybody's kind of holding their breath, waiting for a harvest time pressure. But I'm not sure we've got a lot of that going to happen here on a worldwide basis. But right now, Monday's numbers are probably going to be a ho hum and new crop numbers for corn and soybeans, but the wheat number could be interesting if they decide that there's a concern about world production out there in wheat, and maybe we're going to start tightening up things here a little bit more on wheat going forward. But today, we're waiting for those numbers at 11 o'clock on Monday.
Yes, and so what price ranges are you expecting for next week for both corn and soybean?
Well, beans are hanging right in here. They're trying to end up moving up the top side of things here with tonight's close and that. Uh, Kind of feel like that our recent support here in the 1030 zone could hold together. I guess that real interesting feature on this thing, if we can take out 1050, it's we've been in this, I'll take this back, 1060 to 1030 zone for over 2 weeks. If we get above that level, we might swing it up into the 1080 zone on beans. But right now, everybody seems to be doing that. The corn market, we're bumping along against the bottom here on that July. And right now, we actually did slip through our recent range on that thing yesterday, and we backed up near it today. But definitely, hopefully, we get less carryover stock than, on my number here at 1.8 versus the trade's 1.95, and maybe that'll give us a swing back up into the 470, 75 zone. That's going to be a tough one out there. That's the downtrend line from back in the wintertime through the highs we had here in mid to late April. So I'd be telling people if we get there to be a marketer of corn, of that moving towards the 90% level there. Wheat prices are so cheap, it's hard to do anything. You just got to seem to ride it out here on new crop sales and that on the wheat at this point. Hopefully, we're going to get some concerns about the U.S. crop because one thing I failed to mention that there was some concerns about a virus and that potentially impacting the Kansas crop in the western half, which is could be quite interesting. They brought up yesterday in the markets and that, and we'll have to see how that turns out to be. We're going to have the week tour next week through Kansas, so that'll bring us some more information about U.S. wheat. But today, we're it's kind of gritting our teeth here and see if we can get back to 550.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll get
Take
back
care.
next week. Bye.